Good to go? Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ryan Robb. I'm the CEO for Stoney Tribal Administration. I'd like to thank you all for coming to Treaty 7 lands and specifically to the Stoney Nakoda Nations. In Stoney, our welcome is Umbawastich, so welcome. I'm very pleased to be here today with the Honourable Premier Jason Kenney, Rick McIver, Minister of Transportation, Rick Wilson, Indigenous Relations Minister, Miranda Rosen, our MLA for Banff-Kananaskis, Pete Guthrie, who's the MLA for Airdrie Cochrane, Jeff Ganung, who's the Mayor of Cochrane, and of course our three chiefs that make up the Stoney Nation. From Bearspaw, Chief Darcy Dixon, from Chiniki, Chief Aaron Young, and from Wesley, Chief Clifford Poussette. We're here today to celebrate an important transportation milestone for this region. An agreement has been reached between the Government of Alberta and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations to widen Highway 1A between Cochrane and Canmore. I'm honoured now to call on Premier Jason Kenney to discuss the importance of this partnership, such that it is. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Ryan, and thanks to all of you, chiefs and councillors, ministers and MLAs. As mentioned, Transport Minister McIver and Indigenous Relations Minister Wilson, and thanks very much to MLA Miranda Rosen, in whose constituency we are, and Peter Guthrie, the neighbouring constituency, but most especially thank you to our Stoney Nakoda Nation leadership, councillors and chiefs. First of all, Darcy Dixon, as well as Clifford Poussette, and of course Aaron Young. Thank you all so much for welcoming us to your territory, to your community. It's always a pleasure to visit the beautiful home of the Stoney Nakoda people within the glorious Bow Valley and majestic southern foothills of the Rockies. Today's announcement was originally scheduled for mid-September, I think, but we were waylaid by a late summer snowstorm that day that would have made the drive a bit treacherous, so it was called off. So I'm glad we were able to get out here today. Thank you for your patience in rescheduling this important announcement. And all of this really underscores the importance of the announcement that we are making today. In September, there was also a commemorative service at the site of the historic McDougall Church, which was the site of the signing of Treaty 7 on September 22nd, 1877, on the 142nd anniversary, I should say, of the signing of the treaty. It was a tragedy that historic building, which was built 2 years before the treaty, served as a place of worship for the pioneers of Morleyville and the Stoney Nakoda for generations, that it was claimed by fire in 2017. But I understand that the McDougall Stoney Mission Society is working with our government and making progress on the rebuilding project. In a way, that project is a symbol of rebuilding some of the trust that has been lost since the treaty was signed. Back in the day, that trust was strong. The McDougall family of Methodist missionaries was greatly admired by both the Cree around Fort Edmonton and the Stoney people in this region. And the McDougalls, in turn, had enormous love and respect for the Indigenous people of the West. Here's what Chief Sweetgrass said of Morley Mission founder John McDougall, who grew up amongst the Cree and hunted buffalo with the Stonies. Chief Sweetgrass said, quotes, "We believe you, John. You belong to us. We have listened to you because of what you said, but more because of the way you have spoken, even in our own language, and as one of ourselves," unquote. And here's what John's wife Elizabeth said of Chief Jacob Goodstoney after a frightening grass fire ripped through the valley. Quotes, "To our great joy, the weather changed and rain fell before morning, putting the fire out. Early next day, Chief Jacob, one of nature's noblemen, came to see what caused the fire and to find out if we were safe," unquote. One of nature's noblemen. What a beautiful expression. I believe there is a powerful will among the modern descendants of these 19th century Albertans to rebuild that trust and respect through reconciliation and through new partnerships based on our shared interests and goals in the 21st century. And our government, the government of Alberta, has made that one of our top priorities. Shortly after taking office, we revived a latent tradition of annual summit meetings between Alberta's cabinet and Alberta's First Nations chiefs. We also created the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, an unprecedented initiative that will help First Nations invest in resource development and infrastructure projects to become partners in prosperity derived from these drivers of our economy from our shared resources. This summer, I was honored to be the first ever Alberta Premier to attend the Lac St. Anne pilgrimage and as well to attend the Poundmakers Lodge Treatment Center annual powwow. And I'd like to thank and acknowledge Minister Wilson for having worked so hard over the past 6 months to visit the vast majority of First Nations communities across the province, listening in a spirit of reconciliation and humility. So I am very pleased to be here today to announce action on another partnership between First Nations and the Alberta government. The widening and upgrading of Highway 1A within the Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We have successfully completed an agreement with the chiefs for the transfer of land needed for this work. And in the budget we just tabled, we allocated $26.5 million in the 4-year capital plan to complete the stage for a further $50 million investment, setting the stage for a further $50 million investment to complete this $76.5 million project. The primary benefit of this work will be improved road safety, both for people who drive it and those who walk and bicycle on its shoulders like many people from the nation do. Highway 1A is a vital connector between Calgary, Cochrane, Canmore, and the Trans-Canada Highway, averaging about 2,000 vehicles a day. It also is a primary access route to the Ghost Lake Reservoir and the great year-round outdoor recreational amenities that are there. The collision rates on the highway, including collisions involving animals, are significantly higher than they are for similar Alberta roadways. The highway was originally built way back in 1946 and has not had a significant upgrade since then. So this project will see a 29-kilometer stretch improved to modern standards, and through that stretch, it will be doubled in terms of its width. Widening and upgrading will lower collision rates, but in making the highway safer and more efficient and attractive for travelers, it may also create new opportunities for investment, new businesses, and new jobs for members of the Stoney Nakoda First Nation. Plus, there will be smoothing out of some of the existing highway dips and hills and straightening some of the curves, which will further increase highway safety, especially during wild foothill snowstorms like the one we had in September. I met with the chiefs and some of the councillors on all of this back in, I think, March, before the provincial election, and they told me about this long-standing effort to get this critical infrastructure upgraded and the difference it would make in the lives of the nation and its people, improving their safety, their ability to get around the community, and so I want to thank the chiefs and their councillors, their administration, but also especially Minister McIver on the government side for having finally successfully concluded an issue that has been discussed for over 30 years. So we are delighted, that I always say that reconciliation cannot just be symbols and words, it has to be actions. And today we are acting. And I look forward to seeing the equipment out there in the spring as we begin to widen this infrastructure in a concrete sign of partnership between the Government of Alberta and the Stoney Nakoda First Nation. This is an outstanding example of working together to build infrastructure that will make life better for Albertans, spark investment, create jobs, and help get our province working and growing again. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to hearing from Rick and the Chiefs and then seeing this agreement finally signed after all of these years. Cheers.
Thank you, Premier. I'd like to now call on Transportation Minister Rick McIver to offer us some more details on this important project. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Ryan. I want to thank Chiefs Dixon, Chief Young, and Chief Poussette for inviting us here today and for hosting us. This is an important day for Alberta, and we hope it's an important and good day for the nations as well. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you and talk about what I think is a good path we are on together. We're all brothers and sisters, and we all will benefit together, I believe. It's the way it needs to be. It's an especially good day having announced the Highway 1A widening. Practical measures like this are what matter the most to the Alberta government. We know real change comes with action, not just gestures. Having Premier Kenney here, thank you, Premier, speaks to that commitment at the highest levels of our government. Having the chiefs here speaks to that commitment, that friendship at the highest levels of your government. So I think that's just, and that's how it should be. It's a real show. In my view, it's a real show of partnership and friendship. It's why we're taking action on meaningful projects. The more time I come here, the greater honor I feel being able to work with the members of the nation, with the chiefs and councils. Appreciate the council members being here as well, and working on issues that matter. It's been a few years. Been working together. I think we attempted to complete this back in 2013, the last time I was transportation minister, and now we are getting back to it again. It's also great to be here with Miranda, our MLA, as well as where are you? Oh, there you are. Sorry, you're right in front of me there. Sorry, Peter Guthrie, and Minister Wilson. It really makes to me it speaks to the commitment across our government. Safety is one of the big reasons. It's a big reason for across the province, but this particular road is well traveled, connects Cochrane to Canmore, and as everybody knows, whenever there's an accident or a collision on Highway 1, guess where everybody goes? Through the nation on the 1A. Upwards of 2,000 vehicles a day travel the highway. Widening it will make it safer, and improve the flow of traffic through the area. Pedestrian safety is another key component. Too many members of the Stoney Nation have been killed or injured walking on this road. We hope this will put an end to that. That's certainly one of the big things that matter to our government. Too many accidents with collisions have happened, and too many of those have included nation members. And we need to put an end to that as well. Also, through economic development, access to Ghost Lake Recreation Area, and we hope and believe and are very much in support of more economic development for the Stoney Nations along Highway 1A. It matters to your Alberta government, and we certainly want to see the nation's benefit. As the Premier said, the road was constructed in 1946, and very little in the way of improvement has been done since then. This will include widening of just over 29 kilometers of the road from its current 6.7 meters to 13 meters, which will improve it to current standards and will include, wait for it, shoulders on each side. Anybody that rides a bicycle or walks on that road will notice that difference right away. I see lots of heads nodding at that. Shoulders seem to make people smile, and it makes me smile too. We'll also be making the ditches less steep. For us motorcycle riders, it means that when we're not supposed to go off the road, but when we do, there's a better chance that people live through it, because we've seen too much carnage that way too over the years. So this all matters. As the Premier said, it'll smooth up some of the dips and hills along the road, and there's a lot of other work that needs to be done. So just, surveys need to be completed in addition to the environmental and archaeological work. We estimate the construction will take 2 to 3 years to complete once a contract is awarded. And let me say this, I'm very proud to be signing this agreement with the Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We look forward to many more opportunities to work together in the future as friends, as partners, as neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. This is an important day for us at Stoney as well. So with that, I'd like to give our chiefs a chance to have some words for you. So I'll start with Chief Young, if I could, please. So Chief Aaron Young, Chiniki First Nation.
Ambastino, Shnish, Nagambane. 네, 혼자 한국인이 토막되네. 너 자쟁이 나빅되네. 비하나 우원노. 비하나 우노제 해파나제 핵다. 또해 장구 가르치에 다나 토기야. 장구니서 오페부원 원에 하이웨이. 해차이도 기스가 만코치 하이자스 장구네 없된 야원 호나부원. yanzu hunan shi stana ein sein nustan buon la gunchiami etchen nan chage ne shain engi bicha swabinde chajengi nabis da hasa kesh changune was tejun mangte nya nabiktine shis tehishna nangu chinjain chiami to ada ya biktine ko ishi makta nibiktine was tekton etchen jengos nanga ban imbaib na chon etchen hunga tank ta bicha ne Alberta jamden I hai hibnesis was the one. Just in high hibis and so on. And on Takoskabchako, you in Chagabuan. A check the Gambane, Yibita Hungabi Tajiko Hinde, Opuagin no sneeze, a penno. Ladies and gentlemen, awesome day it is. In sneeze, in other words. I'd like to first thank the Premier, Jason Kenney, Minister Wilson, Minister McIver, and our MLA Miranda, and our friend Cochrane, where is he, for being here with us, for this opportunity, for this great day, making Alberta a place to be safe, a place to call home, and yet at the same time to enjoy what we do. This is long overdue for the fact that since the early 80s and 70s, we've been talking about 1A highway. And since then, we've met a lot of tragedies. We have met some difficulties in times of commute as we do back and forth from Canmore and Bath and so forth. But today marks a history to mark a new path to the future. And having said that, just before the election, we had an opportunity to meet with Premier Kenney. And at that time, we made the important statements of our elders and our children who have been wanting to make sure that everything is safe. And when they say safe, these children go to school to Cochrane, to Canmore, and their commute is the 1A highway. And for them to experience some hazards just based on the size of the road itself it's not safe at all, for sure. But today, to hear that and to make it happen, I appreciate Premier Kenney's attendance today. And as we move forward, the beginning of a strong relationship that benefits our people, especially Native First Nations people and the province of Alberta, marks a relationship of reconciliation. We've been talking about that for quite a while. We've been saying reconciliation. But I believe today, as one of my colleague chiefs from the north said, it's time for reconciliation. And I believe that's what we're doing today. And that as we move forward, it is important that we take action in regards to what we say. And by that, the partnership will strengthen in what we do and what we're working for the future of our province. And as we gather here today with my colleagues, Chief Dixon and Chief Poussette, it is an honor to say thank you and welcome to our country. First Nations people, we are the mountain people, and as I tell each visitors that come to our nation, take a rock with you. That's us, the mountain people. With that, we can build a strong community and a strong nation, especially a strong Alberta community as well. With that, I'd like to say thank you. Ishnis.
Thank you, Chief Young. Now I'd like to call on from Wesley First Nation, Chief Clifford Poussette. Chief. Thanks.
Thank you. Amba wastits. Nanga amba ne amba tanga tanga wastitsa ihai hibit. Yewa kande isnirsing ejabtit nanga amba ne. Intrahanga hins ne hedzatsa. Wateji ichi in isnobka chakaze Se si honga poni na pejabuktia. De na ngamba nende honga binge gijiamni yeskabi komenden. Ishnieshi chigamno niruna hibune. Ne changu o tanga in jubikti chance. De na ngamba ne. Da hongo stegeno ne na ngamba ne. Toda pagi yamtine ngitabi tastabi watejabi neko. Ya pejabikti chawano ne ngamba ne. Echene ishnieshi chigamno ngan chenya ibni chance. Thank you. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here with us for this special occasion. It's a mark of history. In regards to the 1A, I'd like to thank the two governments, provincial government, the federal government, and also our own government, Stoney Nakoda Nation. I'd like to thank the ministers, Rick, both Ricks, the MLA of this riding, our neighbors to the east, Cochrane, and whoever's here from your staff. I'd like to thank each and every one of you. A special day for Stoney Nakoda people, and as you mentioned, safety is number one. In our reserve here, our nation members has lost their lives over the past years, and other people too. Not just the nation members, provincial people, tourists, etc. But today is a significant day for us to be honored with this special day. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you, my council, Bearspaw Chief and Council, Chiniki Chief and Council, and our staff who negotiated hard for us. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here with us. And I'd like to say for economic development ventures in the future, we will be striving for those adventures, opportunities that you're going to give us for widening of the 1A. And mentioning of the students that travel east and west will benefit too for safety reasons. Thank you. Have a good day. Sneers.
See, we had an accident right there. We're not even on 1A. So, thank you, Chief. And from Bearspaw First Nations, I'd like to invite Chief Darcy Dixon.
Good afternoon, or maybe it's still morning here. Good morning. First of all, just like to thank the Premier and his staff, his ministers, for coming out to our territory this morning to announce what they feel and what we feel is important to our citizens here in Morley. Also wanted to thank the local MLA, the Mayor Cochrane, for their attendance, and those people that have come out from I guess the bureaucrats, I would say, from the offices for joining us, including our own bureaucrats, our staff, as well as our Stoney Tribe's elected officials, the councilmen, for being here. I just wanted to say that I do agree with all what was said in the opening remarks of the leadership. I do believe it's important. Safety has continued and will continue to be an issue for our people here in Morley, as well as those that travel the roads in and around us. I would also like to say over the years we've tried a number of times, I'm sure the Premier knows and his staff knows, to try to come to an understanding on how we can make sure that we create a partnership, create a government-to-government relationship with the provincial government, as well as how do we address some of the concerns we have as the Stoney tribe. And reconciliation, that seems to come up a lot. Today is part of that message that goes out to the public, I believe, that it's a step forward for our nation. Just wanted to say, you know, safety for our people is a priority here in our community. We lack the services. that other nations have and other governments have, and hoping, someday that we can try to come up and start getting on board with what's happening around us. One of them is the RCMP. Who do they provide services for? As you know, the tribe, we don't have an RCMP. We don't have no police force of our own. So safety is and will continue to be an issue for the nation. Economic development, I agree with the 1A and the way that that road should be made safe and how we should try to include our nation members, our people, to have an opportunity to be in the government. Alberta's, I guess one of their mandate is to create more jobs. We'd like to do that for our people as well. There's still some fine-tuning, I think, before I can execute the agreement with my councilmen from the Eden Valley Reserve, because we do have land there that we've been negotiating with the government. It's, I believe it's in the bureaucratic phases now. I'd like to know more on that, where that's going. We are one people here, the Stoney tribe, and our people there, the Southern Reserve members, we're not part of being able to do that for our community. So there still needs to be some work that needs to be done. But in saying that, I congratulate the ministers. I thank them, the Premier, and those that have came. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief Dixon, and thank you to the three chiefs. And as stated, we very much look forward to the start of this project and to continue our strong working relationship. I'd like to invite now the chiefs and Minister McIver to come up and sign the agreement that we have for the 1A expansion. Thank you.
Well done. Congratulations. Finally getting it done. Thank you. Thanks for your patience. It only took 60 years, eh? Thank you. Now's the painful part. Take it out.
Okay, thank you. So with that, the formal portion of our program is over. So at this time, I'm going to call on the Premier's Press Secretary, Christine, to moderate a Q&A session with the media. Thank you.
So I'll invite the Premier and the Minister to come back up to the podium. For the media in the room, we have a mic set up to your right, which will be helpful in helping us to hear the questions. So if you could use that, and we will get started.
I'll just stand up here on the outside chance there might be a question for me. But Chiefs, if you want to pitch in on, well, pretty much anything, you're more than welcome. It's your territory here, so please go ahead.
Any questions from media in the room?
Good afternoon, Premier. At a time when we're diminishing some programs, why was this prioritized?
Well, this is part of our capital plan, and we have reduced by about 15% our budgeted capital spending over the next 4 years to help us stop the dive into debt, to balance our budget so that we can ensure the future of programs. But within the 85% of the capital plan that's left, we're keeping those that are priorities. This one is a long-standing priority. It's a public safety issue and an economic issue. We have, when you exclude animal-related accidents, the number of accidents on this stretch of road is about twice as high as the average on roads in the rest of the province. And so this is a public safety imperative that we need to fix. Just to put it in real simple terms, as the chiefs explained it to me, there are members of the Stoney Nakoda community who, to get from house to house or from community to community, they have to walk on a busy highway with no shoulders. That's their sidewalk. That's their trail. And in the summer tourism season, you have huge number of cars pushing through there. As Rick's mentioned, when Highway 1, when Trans-Canada is sometimes occasionally shut down because of an accident, you have it turns into a traffic jam. And there's just been far too many accidents, injuries, and fatalities. So for us, this is a public safety issue. It should have happened a long time ago. I know that Minister McIver was close to getting an agreement with the Stoney Nakoda people on this 5 years ago. Unfortunately, the last government, the NDP, did not prioritize this. They couldn't come to an agreement. We're glad that we finally have.
One more. Why are you revisiting the ideas from the firewall letter of 2001 when they were abandoned by subsequent governments for nearly 2 decades?
Well, look, this is a new time, and these are new challenges. There is a federal government that just ran a campaign against Alberta, against our largest job-creating industry, that will be supported by opposition parties who are committed to shutting down the energy industry that produces so much of Alberta's wealth and jobs. And we have provincial governments that are trying to stand in the way of pipelines to help us get a fair deal for our resources, a federal government that killed 2 pipelines, that bungled Trans Mountain, that brought in the No More Pipelines law, the tanker ban, and a prime minister says he wants to phase out the oil sands and campaigned against what he called the big Alberta oil companies. So we've never faced a more hostile situation coming from the central government. And some of the provinces who have benefited enormously from the wealth generated in Alberta are now saying they're going to do everything they can to stand in the way of us exporting our energy. This is a new moment in our history, and Albertans are asking us to stand up and fight for this province's vital economic interests. We were elected on a mandate to defend Alberta, and we're not asking for a special deal. We're simply asking for a fair deal. That's why we'll be consulting with Albertans on the ideas that they support, and there's quite a wide range of them. So we are going to be listening respectfully to Albertans. You've seen some polls recently that indicate as many as a third of Albertans supporting separating from the Canadian Federation. I disagree with them. I've laid out the reasons why. I am and always will be a Canadian patriot. But we need to show those, and by the way, the same polls show 3/4 of Albertans sympathize with or understand that sentiment. That really concerns me as the Premier of Alberta. My democratic duty is to defend the interests of this province. My patriotic duty is to maintain national unity. And I think the best way we can achieve both is by Ottawa giving Alberta at least as much respect as the province of Quebec gets.
Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. Why didn't you mention a provincial police force, revenue agency, or pension plan as part of your platform during the election campaign?
Well, again, these are ideas that we're now going to consult with Albertans. We're not going to implement any such changes without clear support from Albertans. These are ideas that Albertans have asked us to look into, given the growing hostility of the central government. And that's exactly what we're going to do. I've also been clear that we would not make any changes in those areas without an endorsement from Albertans in a referendum. Ultimately, Albertans are the boss on these questions. We're just going to give them first of all, we're going to ask Albertans what their opinions are, given we're now in 5 years of economic decline and stagnation. Our economy is smaller today than it was 5 years ago. People have lost their homes, their jobs, their life savings, their hope, and they're asking us to fight for our economic future. And that's that fight begins with consulting with folks on whether we should exercise the same powers that the province of Quebec does. But ultimately, we would only proceed with changes like creating an Alberta pension plan, for example, or an Alberta police force, if that was endorsed by the majority of Albertans in a fair and free democratic referendum vote.
Blake Law, Global Calgary. We've received a number of complaints from people's legitimate comments on your live stream Saturday being moderated or blocked. Were government officials told or directed to do this?
No.
Why were comments
I don't know.
blocked?
Perhaps I have no idea what that's about. We generally, you can look at my Facebook page. You'll see it's pretty wild. Lots of criticism from all directions. People are permitted to do so. Perhaps somebody was too eager monitoring that page on that day. I think they've been told that we absolutely, unless there are hateful or comments or using abusive language, there'll be people can and should be able to comment on our social media platforms. I got to tell you though, with respect, Global, we are dealing with an economic crisis in this province. You've got a third of Albertans talking about separation, 3/4 saying they agree with that. There are much bigger issues than angry tweets that we should be discussing.
Well, I think the reason why it was brought up was because they were legitimate comments about your proposal for fair deal.
Yeah, you can.
When we're talking about unity across the country,
Sure.
Perhaps it's good to have that discussion.
I suspect this event's being live streamed, and I'm sure you're going to see, if you check it out, you'll see NDP folks attacking me and other folks saying, why don't you separate now? You'll see the whole spectrum of opinion. We welcome that on our social media platforms. I've made that clear to my staff.
Thank you, Premier.
Kevin Green from CTV News. In the same vein, the comments that they were referring to, recently you were referring to just now, were reposted later, but taking them off the live stream took them away from the majority of eyes. And I know you said just now that you believe there are more important issues to deal with, but many people see this as an issue of free speech. Are there more important issues than free speech?
My point is, Albertans are concerned about an economic crisis in this province. Most Albertans don't focus on Twitter wars. I know that's a surprise to some folks in the media, but I can tell you our MLAs and we talk to real people every day, and I would venture 99% of them. You know, by the way, if all this social media noise mattered, the NDP would have won the largest majority government in history last April. They absolutely won the Twitter election. But we were elected on a mandate to stand up for this province, to defend its vital interests, to grow its economy, and that's what we're focused on. But I've made it clear to our staff that we've always had a very wide open approach to people being able to comment on social media. I don't know if somebody didn't understand that on one particular incident on one day. As long as comments are not abusive, they don't use foul language, or they don't express hateful opinions, people are welcome to comment on our social media platforms.
So are you saying then that this will never happen again?
Well, I don't know exactly what happened. I was focused on delivering what was probably one of the most consequential speeches of an Alberta premier in a couple of decades on the content of these very big issues, not on monitoring Twitter wars. So I've made it clear to our staff that our social media platforms should be wide open for public commentary as long as the language is not abusive or extreme.
Hi, Nick Blakeney with City TV. I just want to back up, and you were speaking about the concern. I mean, like you said, we've got talk that a third of Albertans want to separate even. How much legitimacy do you have in the Wexit movement, and do you really think Albertans want to leave Canada?
No, as I said on Saturday, I think in their heart of hearts, most Albertans are Canadian patriots. But at the same time, many Albertans feel like they're not at home in their own country. And that's something that we cannot ignore, or frankly, we deride. You know, there's some of these, I know Ms. Notley and some of the elite opinion people down east just want to ignore, diminish, or deride the frustration and even anger in this province. That's the wrong approach. That would just invite it to grow. So I think we need to listen to people, let them have their say. And that's exactly what we'll be doing through the Fair Deal panel and with other consultations in the months to come. People need to say their piece. But at their in their heart of hearts, I believe that most Albertans are patriotic Canadians. Yesterday, we had hundreds of thousands of Albertans gather around cenotaphs and at Legion halls across the province to commemorate our war dead who fought in Canada's uniform, including many proud members of our First Nations. And that was an expression of the deep patriotism that I think lies in the hearts of most Albertans. And as I said on Saturday, we should not let one prime minister, one government, or one set of policies make us feel unwelcome in our country. And so the response that I'm offering is A, to listen to people, and B, to fight for a fair deal. A lot of the ideas that we've floated for Albertans to comment on are powers that Quebec has exercised for decades. And I think Albertans deserve at least as good a deal as Quebec has. So we'll see what Albertans have to think about that.
I have one last question. I apologize. Radio producer sent this one.
Sure.
He wants to know your comments with Don Cherry being ousted from Hockey Night in Canada.
I'm going to let you down on that. I'm not here to be a pundit on every issue and dispute. I'm here to fight for a fair deal for Alberta and not get into Sportsnet and things like that.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
I don't know, Chief, do you want to comment on Don Cherry? No, he's out. Chief's not going on that either. Right? All right. I will say something about sports, which is I'm glad that the Edmonton Eskimos are still in the running for the Grey Cup. Sorry about what happened to the Stamps the other day, but I know that the huge number of Albertans of Saskatchewan origin are also very happy the Riders are still in. That's how far I'll go on the sports.
Could I ask a question to
Sure.
one of the chiefs, just in regards to the Highway 1A twinning?
Chiefs, he wants to ask you guys.
I know we have three here, so if someone wants to take the lead on this one. Just at the mic, please. Just in regard to, I know this has been talked about a long time, and there has been safety concerns along Highway 1A for quite some time. What was it specifically about the negotiations that happened most recently that led to this agreement for the land transfers? What was it kind of specifically that allowed this agreement to happen?
Relationship that we're working on, for the fact that this has been going on for many years, since the 70s and so forth. But part of the negotiations and the wording and so forth, we had to make sure that we understood where we were coming from, and that foremost was the safety for our people, not just the Stoney people, but for Albertans in general too.
Was there something specifically included in these negotiations that weren't agreed to in, say, the 2013 talks?
Not really, but in parts of some of the First Nations, as you are aware, across Alberta and Canada in itself, we are placed in small reservations. And in some of these key deals that we talked about were some regularizations of particular parts of the satellite reserves that we have to make it an official reserve status for sure. So that was one of them. But at the same time, for the details of how we're going to be doing the work here on the reserve, but plus at the same time, some of the spin-offs that can promote economic development for our own people too as well.
Will some of the construction include First Nations workers?
That's the intent.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. If I can invite the leadership and the media, we're going to do a photo op in the lobby.